Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. My name is Michael Douglas, and welcome to Tray First Look Agent Gateway. Thank you so much for being able to give us your time today and join this very exciting webinar around our newest release on Agent Gateway for MCP. I'm joined by my colleague Tom Warren. Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Hey Michael, good to see you again. Getting quite a theme this, me and you tag teaming these events.
Isn't it? Isn't it, Tom? So, Tom, I know that we've got a number of new people that are new to Trey, and I was looking to see if you could just give a bit of background into yourself for anybody who's not familiar with you.
Yeah, of course. I'm the product director here at Tray. Been working very closely on what we're going to be going through today. Really excited to kind of get this in front of you all. So yeah, got a lot to kind of squeeze in, and some really interesting stuff to show off.
Great, thanks, Tom. And by the way, for anybody who has any questions along the way, feel free to put them in the chat and we will answer them towards the end of the presentation. So without further ado, let's just jump into it. So as I said, this is all around our release, our MCP release. And before I get into that, we just want to take a moment to kind of sort of set up of why we're here, why we're releasing Agent Gateway for MCP. And this is a quote from our CTO, Alistair Russell, and it really speaks to the adoption challenges that organizations are facing around MCP, right? There is really a looming crisis that's coming from the race to adopt MCP and build tools and servers, and it's creating a sprawl of technology that's really going to add on to the future technical debt of an organization. And really, why this is happening is because since the protocol first came out, developers and shadow IT are off building these private MCP servers and tools in the likes of JavaScript, Python, TypeScript, and so on. And these tools are interacting with very sensitive systems and data, and really users are accessing unchecked public MCP servers. Now, what does that do? That really creates a major headache for the enterprise because now they have tools that are have no guardrails, no controls, and no business logic built in. It's really kind of dealing with the black box. You're not really sure what went in to actually build it, and now that is creating a major headache. And how do you debug? How do you test for these, right? And so IT teams are now trying to get their arms around how do we bring rigor and management, and how do we ensure proper levels of security and governance that are going to go into this MCP adoption. So that is the main reason, main challenge is why we're here from adoption perspective, but also there's a lot of more technical challenges from the fundamentals of MCP. So Tom, I know you've been out in out in the wild talking to customers and have a lot more experience than I do in terms of some of these technical challenges. So I'd just love to get your input here on some of the challenge you're seeing from a security and governance perspective.
Yeah, well, you kind of touched on quite a few of the challenges just in the kind of the intro there, and this is a rapidly evolving protocol which is changing very frequently. And we're monitoring and keeping an eye on those changes, as is everyone else. And whilst there's a kind of a shift towards a focus on security and governance, a lot of that isn't available right now. And this is really where Tray comes in because we can actually offer that out of the box, and you'll see that as we go through the demo what we have in place to kind of bring in that kind of those guardrails and those security and governance procedures that aren't available natively now and are becoming a risk for the reasons you gave in the previous section.
Yeah, and so when we talk about, what we're saying about MCP servers can't be trusted, what do we mean by that, Tom?
Well, I mean, there's been a big proliferation of, vibe-coded MCP servers. There's servers that are running locally, servers that, can perform very kind of sensitive actions, as you kind of touched on before. And you can actually see this in a lot of clients now where they're, really kind of cautious about people, implementing and interacting with MCP because of the risk, with actually accessing and making changes in sort of downstream systems. So having somewhere to kind of centralize all that and expose it kind of to your organization is really kind of key, and that's really what the agent gateway provides, particularly when it comes to MCP.
Yeah, and when we're talking about the many of these MCP servers that are out there are just, wrap APIs. And I know that agents need a lot more than just a raw API. So where is the kind of the delta here between what are a lot of these raw API MCP servers are versus what they need to be in order for agents to properly work?
Yeah, so I think this is probably one of the real key areas. There's a lot of dialogue going on around this now. There's been discussion for a while how the first iteration of MCP server, either ones built by individuals for kind of different services, or the ones provided by vendors themselves, have essentially just been a kind of an API wrapper. And that's not how agents work. It's not how human beings work. When we're interacting with systems, we don't just go through the list of APIs and start performing actions that way. We do it through an interface and we perform kind of contextual actions based on the results we're trying to achieve. And agents essentially operate in the same way. So if you have just a list of tools, the agent's going to have to work sequentially. It's going to have to look up information. It's going to have to find more information. It's going to have to ask for more information. And that could be 5 or 6 different tools to even do something as simple as creating a Jira ticket or sending a Slack message. So you have that real kind of problem of essentially equipping an LLM with contextual tools to perform the tasks that we would be doing in these applications directly. But this then creates a secondary problem, and we'll actually touch on this as we go into the demo around like composite tooling. And how the more tools you expose, the more context window you actually use, and this obviously increases cost and increases the risk of hallucination. And there was actually a interesting article that from Anthropic earlier in the week about introducing more code potentially into MCP to actually link tools together and remove some of that kind of determinism from the LLM. And obviously this creates an additional challenge because the only thing probably scarier than vibe coded MCP servers that wrap APIs is vibe coded MCP servers that wrap APIs and execute arbitrary code. So, it's an interesting to see that kind of direction, and we'll actually go into that when we look at the composite tool offering within Tray.
Yeah, so thanks so much for that, Tom. So we've looked at the adoption challenges, we'll looked at the technical challenges. So now without further ado, we'll do a intro to Agent Gateway and how Agent Gateway is able to address a lot of these challenges. And Tom is going to kind of give you guys an overview of Agent Gateway and how it's going to help your organizations with the MCP adoption.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of introduce the kind of core components ahead of the kind of demo before we get kind of stuck in. I've already touched on some of these, but essentially the agent gateway allows you to kind of expose Tray assets using MCP, and you can consume them with a client, and that's what we're going to kind of show you in the demo. But obviously, this means you can essentially publish Tray composite agent tools. These are Tray workflows essentially, and this actually handles some of the kind of challenges I was touching on before around exposing a large number of tools, but also equipping tools and ensuring tools can perform certain actions without kind of pushing that work onto the LLM. So that's a real kind of key kind of component of the offering. We've also got the option to kind of publish Tray connector operations. So we obviously have our extensive library of connectors, and each and every single operation within that kind of connector library can be exposed as an individual MCP tool. And that's obviously incredibly powerful because there are some APIs where it does just make sense. And the example I'm going to show you is one of those that I think very much fits in that category. So where you can expose just a static operation, it's very clear what it's used for, and the LLM can use it effectively. It doesn't need any kind of additional context. So I'll show you some examples of that. And then going beyond that, there's a reason we want to, this is going to become a kind of gateway is because you have the ability to actually connect to existing MCP servers and access a range of MCP servers that we're hosting. So this is essentially allows you to have that true gateway functionality. And that really starts to address that shadow IT problem you touched on earlier, where, we've got organizations and essentially every IT leader I speak to is facing the same problem where various members throughout the organization are spinning up their own tooling, spinning up their own MCP servers, and it's really hard to kind of get a kind of grip of what's going on. And obviously they want to centralize that some way without kind of, stifling that innovation piece. So having a centralized gateway and allowing people to kind of, expose their MCP servers and connect them via Tray adds that kind of security layer in place. And finally, the kind of the piece, and we'll kind of touch on this as well, is the orchestration piece. This essentially allows you to kind of build out agent orchestration in a way that you can, expose agents, sub agents to essentially an orchestrator agent to allow that kind of agent to agent communication. We'll touch on that as well in the demo.
Great, thanks, Tom. And so before we jump to the demo, just to kind of give you guys a understanding of what we're, the core benefits that the Agent Gateway release is doing is really allowing you to have an ability to maintain security and compliance when you're creating all of these servers and tools in a centralized, managed environment that is enterprise ready, that can be have full observability by IT. And secondly, you're really bringing all of that shadow IT that we talked about from the far corners of the enterprise, all into the dark corners. You're getting all of that duplication across departments completely out of the way, and you're able to being able to reduce a lot of the duplication and the technical debt that is coming from the current situation. And lastly, you're really setting up your organization with a future-proof ecosystem to adopt, agent to agent and other new capabilities that will be coming down the track, in a matter of weeks and months as we have seen the rapid development of agentic move forward. And really, the MCP, the agent gateway is all about bringing order to the development chaos, right? So on the left-hand side, we've seen here what I talked about earlier in building all of these different solutions interface that are interfacing with the backend systems and exposing to ChatGPT in very ad hoc, unsecure ways, and you're shifting everything into a central orchestrated platform that is secure, approved, managed, and being able to really bring order to that chaos. And I think a great example of that is one of our customers, uh, a leading music publisher are really on the bleeding edge of technology, especially around agents and an MCP. And they were going through all of those trials and tribulations adopting MCP. And with being able to bring in Agent Gateway, they're really able to enforce those policies, permissions, and versioning all on a single platform with centralized visibility and traceability, and being able to reduce a lot of the risk that comes with MCP adoption. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it back over to Tom, and he's going to walk you through the demo.
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you, Michael. I think that's just an excellent quote there. And I think there's a lot of kind of technical discussion going on with MCP. And I think sometimes it's good to kind of remember that the real life use cases and the need for fast adoption is essentially this gets you closer to your customers, right? So it's a way of kind of getting that interaction to your customers. And this is why in certain industries we're seeing that kind of rapid adoption for industries that need to move quickly. So really interesting quote there. Right. I'm going to kind of share my screen and then we'll be able to dive straight in. So we'll start you off within the Tray platform. So what you are seeing here is essentially the agent gateway within the product itself. And this is a Tray workspace, which I'm exposing essentially via MCP. And essentially, this is where the configuration, the URL is available for you to actually connect to an MCP server. So all the information you need to actually connect to the server is available here. And that's essentially on this page. You can also give the server a name, so you can reference it and see once you've connected to it. So really quite simple kind of setup. What this actually does is then essentially expose any tools within this workspace. And what I mean by tools are essentially Tray workflows that are triggered using our tool trigger. These are the same triggers that are used with the Agent Builder product. So any tools that are built using the Tray Merlin Agent Builder can actually be exposed as MCP tools as well. So you can essentially expose them as an agent via Tray or expose them to a client directly, and you will see that as kind of later on in the demo. So what I've got here is I've essentially got 4 composite tools, these workflow tools, and I can show you kind of how these look. Let's open up this one. So I can view the workflow logs there. So this is where this observability piece really comes in. You can actually dive into the underlying tools, open those up. As you can see here, it's taken me through to this workflow. And this is essentially what's happening when this tool is invoked. And as you can see on the left-hand side, I've got full logs of actually what's happening when this tool is invoked. So this really kind of touches on that observability piece. You can see exactly what is happening in here. You can see which steps are kind of taken out when the tool is invoked. And this kind of eliminates some of that kind of that black box that Michael described earlier, where the MCP server is running something, and it's quite hard to get cool kind of visibility and traceability of what's actually going on there. So you have that within the kind of Tray interface for individual MCP tools. So they're the workflow tools we've got there. As you can see, there's a selection here of composite tools performing very different functions. Also, we have, I mentioned in the previous slide section, we have the ability to actually add connector tools as well. I'm going to do that just now. So as you can see, I'm not using any connectors right now, but let's add in this Salesforce tool. By default, when I add a tool, and this is like another really kind of powerful feature, some MCP servers, I think that the GitHub one's currently exposing around 800 tools, expose a lot of capability. Which again, obviously, you don't want to expose that entirely to the context window of an LLM, because you're quickly going to overwhelm it. So you're actually going to want to necessarily can control what people can do. So this is really powerful because I can go in here and I can manage the operations. And all I'm going to do with this one is actually enable the ability for to run SOQL queries. So if I turn that on now and save that, now that operation is enabled, and the only tool that's exposed via Salesforce is that ability to run SOQL. And obviously, this is quite powerful because it allows you to kind of develop servers to regulate the level of control that people have. So this may be fine to expose to an organization because it's only running queries, so it can only access data. But if you had some, like let's say a sales agent of some kind, or you want to give access to a sales team who are actually changing and modifying data in Salesforce, you could enable other operations, or as I've done here, actually build in the composite tools that perform those particular actions. So for creating leads and updating leads. So now, as you see, I've exposed my 4 workflow tools, which I've got right here. I've got 1 connector tool. Now let's jump over to my client over here, and where you can actually see the server in action. So you can see I'm connected to the server. There it is. Demo MCP A2A server, and you can see the tools that are available. And obviously these tools that are available here map the tools I've exposed through the MCP server or the MCP agent gateway configuration in Tray. So let's kick something off there, and then we can see how how everything kind of manifests in Tray. So if I ask for get me top 5 accounts by ARR and send them to Tom on Slack. So this is going to obviously use a range of kind of tools that I've got available within the kind of product. So, okay, firstly, it's going to actually run that kind of SOQL query. So, again, LLMs are really kind of good at this kind of task. So it's going to run that query, and it's then going to get the data that I've asked for. So it's picked up the information. It's got my kind of 5 records. And now it's actually going to send them to Tom on Slack. We can actually see that happening in real time because it's going to invoke this workflow here. You can see it's already been successful. What it's done is it's tried to send it to Tom, but it doesn't actually know who Tom is. And this is, again, how this kind of composite tool piece comes into play. I'm able to actually expose this information. This is this single tool, which actually looks up the Slack user before sending the message. So instead of having 2 tools to look up a user or getting the user to provide the exact email address or something like that, I'm able to do a kind of lookup, and it's going to find out multiple Toms. So I've asked to send it to Tom. There's couple of Toms in this workspace. I'm going to send it to myself. So I just want to send it to 2. So if I do that, it can then actually go back to the tool with the correct information and send that Slack message directly to myself. So that should do that now. You should see the execution coming through. Again, too quick. It's already through. There it is at the bottom. So now it's been able to successfully send that message. And there they are, my top 5 accounts by ARR. So yeah, that's the real power of composite tools. I've got complete visibility of what's happened here. I've been able to expose a range of functionality to the LLM through a single tool, where if I was using a kind of MCP server directly, I'd probably use multiple tools in place right there. I'm not running arbitrary code. As you can see, everything I'm kind of running is right here. So you've got full visibility of that, full traceability of what's actually happening here. So you can actually follow that through the process that has happened once the tool has been invoked. And yeah, that's essentially the kind of real kind of core power of that. So as you can see, we've got a combination of tools here. The SOQL query that it ran is using a connector operation. So if I show you that again here, that's within my connected tools. That's a SOQL operation there. That is just exposed via using our connectivity API. So it's a direct call to the underlying API via Tray. And essentially that's just exposed out of the box, no configuration needed there. And then I'm using a selection of composite tools to perform actions off the back of that. So that's really kind of what the agent gateway enables you to do. Just finally, let's try something else. Like you might have seen that I had and obviously this is using within the same kind of chat, so slightly different kind of context. But this agent also actually has, or the tools exposed here actually include the ability to invoke HR agent. And that actually exists within a separate Tray workspace. It exists over here. So this is an agent that's been built using the Merlin Agent Builder, and because of the kind of the nature of Tray, I'm able to expose that capability via API, and therefore I can consume it as an MCP tool. So we're a bit slow over on this end now. There's been a bit of delay some of these times, sometimes with the clients, but essentially here we go. It's going to check the balance, the HR balance. So it's now going to invoke that HR agent via my MCP tool here in this project. So it's using this tool, which is exposed to the client I'm using, and it's actually going to route that request to the sub agent, which in this case is essentially the underlying HR agent. And you should be able to see that kicking off. As you can see, it's running over here, so it's already got the information. You can see it's selected kind of the employee details, and it's going to kind of perform some more action. So this is the agent itself performing the action, the sub agent, HR agent, performing these capabilities. And once that's complete, it will return the information to the client, and then the client will be able to tell me exactly how much PTO balance I have. And yeah, so waiting for that information to kind of be rendered. So that's coming back, and that will be kind of made available. So you can see it performs a range of functions. So I've shown you here both the composite tool capability, the ability to kind of expose Tray workflows, the connect operation piece, so being able to expose operations directly where it makes sense, and the ability to actually choose which operations are exposed, to have that kind of really kind of control, which isn't available kind of out of the box, with a lot of kind of clients. You actually have to go into the tool itself, and potentially disable various kind of tools, turn them on or off. But you can actually control what is exposed to your end user. And finally, this kind of orchestration piece where I'm actually able to kind of expose another agent as a tool and then consume it within my client. So if a simple request like this, as you can see there, it's told me how much PTO I have available using this agent, which has information that's available in our kind of human resources system. So yeah, there's a lot there I've kind of covered. So I'm going to hand back over to Michael, and any questions, just get them in the chat.
Great. Thanks so much, Tom. So I'm just gonna go back and share my screen in terms of how we're different from a lot of vendors out there in the marketplace. I think we have a unified platform, right? So we have the agent development combined with the AI ready intelligent iPaaS, and we have built native functionality specifically for AI. So native vector databases, smart data sources for anybody that's been following our webinars throughout the year, with our release of smart data sources earlier in the year with over 700 plus connectors. We really have the ability to have a breadth of integrations right across the enterprise. And then with the release of Merlin Agent Builder, being able to create agents with a lot of agentic AI tools, and being able to govern that all with that secure fundamental iPaaS underneath it all. So with that, I'm going to, because I know we're running out of time, move over to Q&A, and I think we have a question. How does the MCP client, Claude, for example, know which MCP tool to use? Is it based on tool details we provide?
Yeah, actually, she could have probably shown that. So actually, Mike, if you let me share again, I'll actually show that quite quickly. I think it's a really good question.
Yep.
Um, So yeah, so essentially the information again is because we extensively use sort of JSON schema to expose information in Tray. This is why we're able to use connectivity API because it's very close to the existing MCP schema, so we can actually map really quite closely there. But and the reason you need to use a kind of a tool trigger is because this is how we expose the information in the correct format. So to kind of get the details of the tool, it uses the workflow name and the description. So this is what's exposed to the LLM, the name and the description, so it knows exactly what to do. You can see that within the client as well. It's obviously kind of identical to what's available here. But within the agent tool trigger itself, this actually, you can define the schema of the input here. So for the Slack one, really simple, just the content you want to send and the recipient. And I've actually got additional instruction there to kind of use the either a name or a channel ID, and that's how the kind of composite tool works. Either it looks for a user, and if it finds one, it sends the message. But if it doesn't, it returns the available users. So essentially, yeah, the schema is just defined in Tray, and this is what's exposed. Using the kind of schema, using the protocol effectively to the end user. So yeah, this is exactly what the LLM sees when these tools are listed.
Great. Thanks, Tom. The second question we have is you showed a front end UI from Anthropic to interact with your Tray MCP. Is that stood up within Anthropic or is it a UI this MCP tool offers?
Yeah, I'm just using like Claude Desktop there, but obviously the protocol we're adhering to the kind of protocol, so you can actually use this with any client. We have a kind of range of ones supported by default out of the box, but our implementation of MCP adheres to the latest spec, which which means it will kind of work with any client you kind of have, whether that's a existing kind of internal client like Claude Desktop or one you've built yourself. You'll be able to connect to Tray's MCP servers using your client.
Got it. Thanks. And so we have a question. When is this going to be available? So we're currently in early access mode. So please reach out to your account team. If you're a customer, please reach out to your account team, and they will be able to get you access to this. If you're a prospect, please reach out to us on our website, and we will be in contact with you fairly shortly. And then we have one more question. What's the overhead of integrating Agent Gateway into existing observability stacks like Splunk or Datadog?
Yeah, that's another good question. Obviously, I showed you the visual logs within the Tray Builder there, but we actually support log streaming as well, and this obviously adheres to exactly the same kind of process. You can actually stream Tray logs to any system of your choice, just as long as it's exposed, via a URL. So you can stream Tray logs and consume them there. So you could have full visibility in an existing tool. So you can look and see them in Tray, but you can also stream them to a system of your choice.
Great. Thanks. And then another question come through. Are these connectors used for MCP use cases different from standard tray connectors, or is there just a feature flag? Wondering how one Salesforce.com connector can be used for MCP versus standard workflows.
No, so the just I think if I got that right, and I'll follow up if I don't answer this clearly. These are no, they're essentially not. So the kind of the SFDC connector I was using there is just the standard Tray SFDC connector. The operations are available, the operations that are available in the connector. So essentially, you can access the entire connector library directly using within the kind of MCP server configuration.
Great. Thanks, Tom. So that is all the questions we have right now, and that I think we're nearly out of time anyway. So I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody for their attendance. You will get this will be available on demand as well. And, we hope you enjoyed the presentation and Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you once again. Bye
All
now.
right.